Welcome to Horse Chats. We're here with Rick Blaney, Dr. Rick Blaney, and Dr. Charlene Couch. We'll do brief introductions, but it is Horse Month, and this is our Horse Chat, the Galiceño Horse Chat. Charlene.
Yeah, hey everybody. You probably haven't met Emily Rose Johnson yet. She is subbing in today for Brittany, but she is also the Livestock Conservancy's new communications coordinator. So you'll probably be seeing and hearing from her more. We are here today with Dr. Rick Blaney, Suzanne Durham. To your right is Pat Blaney, Rick's wife. And then far to your left, you may not be able to see her yet, is Heidi Reinhardt. And these folks are all, they make up the nonprofit Galiceños of the Suwannee. And we'll talk to them in just a minute.
And so thank you to ManaPro for sponsoring our Horse Chats. We'll play a brief advertisement for them, and then we'll be right back.
Champions, colleagues,
roommates,
and personal trainers.
Whatever role they play,
they're an important part of our lives.
In their quiet way,
and their not so quiet way.
They keep us young.
On our feet,
on the go.
They pull us back to nature.
And push us toward the next adventure.
And as much as we count on them,
they count on us all the more.
To nurture their lives.
With the same commitment.
To protecting them.
Helping them grow.
And thrive.
Treating them.
As well as they treat us. By giving them a little more of our lives.
Because no matter what role they play,
out here
or in here,
we're here to make their lives the best they can be.
ManaPro, nurturing life.
So thank you to ManaPro, and we are live. So if you have questions, send them in. We will see them, and we'll be answering questions as we go. With that said, here is our Horse Chat.
Welcome again, everybody. We're here today to talk about the Galiceño horse, which is critically endangered. Rick Blaney and the rest of his crew who take care of the horses and are part of the nonprofit to conserve these breeds, or this breed, are all here with us today. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. Rick, do you want to start us off by just telling us a little bit about your background? Maybe everyone else can chime in, and how on earth you came to be breeders of this very rare breed.
Well, I'm Rick Blaney. I'm a former college professor, retired back in 2006, and that's when we started up ranching as a hobby, which now has consumed everything we do. The people around me, they own me. They're very, very helpful in everything that we do. We couldn't exist if it wasn't for the folks around me. My wife, Pat, we've been together for 50 years. Yeah, there you are.
Congratulations.
And in the middle is Suzanne Durham. Hey,
the newcomer.
A newcomer. Not that. Oh, have you tell us how long you've been with us? The newest member. Yeah. And then this one over here. Heidi Reinhardt. She has a very important role in the beginning of how we got involved. In fact, I'll say it's all her fault.
He's not wrong.
So actually, I think part of the introduction is I'd like to have each of them say how they got involved. And
I'll probably start with Heidi first, perhaps.
Okay.
Okay. Well, how I got involved was my grandfather, John Lebret, was instrumental in bringing the Galiceños out from Mexico up into the Pacific Northwest, primarily the Spokane area. and he had 4 young daughters at the time. And so he got them a bunch of little ponies, and they had a little Galiceno club up there, and they used them for rodeoing and all that good stuff. So that's how I got involved.
Okay, well, I got involved as I'm a retired college professor also, and Heidi was one of my students, and in fact, my lab assistant. And as I got to know Heidi, I got to know about her love of horses. And when we retired and moved to the Live Oak area in North Florida, we thought it'd be fun to have horses. And little did we know.
And so it began.
It began, yes. And it was all Heidi's fault because she had this connection with her grandfather's horses. Then, Rick, how about you?
I just go along for the ride.
Well, I actually came along to buy some horses when I was retiring, and I literally went online and looked for a small horse, and his website was the one that popped up, the small horse with the big heart. And the more I read and contacted him, and he said, well, why don't you just come and visit? And I said, okay. And that's like, let's go see the puppies, but we're not going to take one home. So I bought 2 of them and took them to Georgia, where I was living at the time. Just 2 years ago, I truly retired and brought them back here to be a part of the Galiceño operation. And so they're fat and happy, and so am I. Not fat, but happy.
That's wonderful.
Okay, so as it is, my mother called me from Idaho and asked me if I'd like a couple horses. And that is when I asked Pat and Rick, do you want a couple ponies? You want a couple horses? And they said yes. We got a horse trailer and went and got our first 2 Galiceños, 2 mares out of Idaho. From there, we researched more about the Galiceno in depth and went to Texas to visit the breeders that were there, Steve Hardcastle and Giles Henshaw, yeah, and learned about the stocks that they had there, where we got our next 2 and where we got our first stallion. And it just built from there.
Wow.
It was early on that we found out how rare they were, because when we stopped in Godley, Texas, we met all the breeders, and that was 4 people.
Wow.
There's only 1 left. But when we first heard about them, we really didn't know anything. And Pat did a lot of research.
Yeah, when we first got these Galiceno horses, none of us knew what's a Galiceño. What in the world? I've never heard of it. So I began to look on the internet, and I found one small website about them and their activities in the Pacific Northwest, where Heidi's grandfather had been, and started looking through horse books. Whenever we could find a book of horse breeds, we'd look, and every once in a while we'd see the Galiceño breed listed, described, some photographs, and so on. And so it was what we discovered from talking with the breeders in Texas and looking at these books and the website. They used to be very, very popular. In the late 60s and early 70s, they were quite popular, especially in the Pacific Northwest. Texas, around Fort Worth, apparently they did very well in the Fort Worth Stockyard rodeo stuff they had there, and other parts of the country too. But apparently they began to lose favor, become less popular, perhaps because the idea bigger is better, because they're a relatively small horse. In fact, they're so popular, Breyer horse models had a made a model of the Galiceño. In fact, the model that the model was based on was a mare called Miss Benita Rojo, and we have the daughter of Miss Benita Rojo. So we have the daughter in our collection of the model. Anyway, they used to be popular, and they started to lose the popularity, and it was evident that, gee, this is a breed that's interesting and maybe needs help. And that's when I got online and contacted the Livestock Conservancy and asked if they would be interested in looking into this breed, because apparently nobody at the Livestock Conservancy knew what a Galiceño was either. So the Livestock Conservancy agreed to take them under study. And we collected DNA samples, hair samples, and sent them to Texas A&M for analysis. And we had Jeanette Behringer and Allison Martin come and visit us and meet the horses, take pictures, and so on several times. And after being under study, they granted the Galiceño the status of critically endangered, and there it went from there. And we continue to work with their DNA. DNA is being analyzed by Texas A&M and by Samantha Brooks at University of Florida, her group at Equine Geneticists. So that's how it all came about, of having them discovered, you might say, or rediscovered.
Wow.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about the DNA studies, because I think that's really fascinating stuff. But before we do it, Rick, would you talk through how this group of horses came to be in North America, the Americas period, and sort of their trek across the nation?
Absolutely. I'll have to start out by saying, my college career, I never particularly liked the subject of history. The horses brought history to me. And I learned a heck of a lot of things that never was taught in school, or maybe I just don't remember. But it all started, of course, with Columbus. And we all know 1492 and all. But most people don't recognize is how much followed and how quickly it followed. Because in his second voyage, he went to Hispaniola. His second voyage, he brought livestock to establish farms on Hispaniola. Along with him came Cortez. And Cortez eventually, pretty much the following year, and by 1500, he had established a colony on Cuba, and he became the governor of Cuba. But most important, included in the different breeds of livestock were the horses. He brought the horses from northern Portugal. Those horses were the Guaranos, and these came to Cuba. Well, over the next 19 years, he increased the numbers that he had brought. They were bred right there. So he had a nice herd of horses. These were the horses that Cortez brought into southern Mexico and started the conquest of the Aztec natives. That took 2 years, but he established villages in southern Mexico, Veracruz to start, and then out onto the Yucatan Peninsula. The horses that he brought, not only during the conquest, but later established in the villages, were these small horses that originated in northern Portugal and adjacent Spain. Those were the Guaranos. Then became Galiceños once they become established. At least that's the way we look at it. Genetically, I'm told over and over again, they're extremely close to the Guaranos. They're hard to tell them apart, except from where they came from. It's an interesting bit of history that happened in a very short number of years. But they were isolated in southern Mexico in the Yucatan. There, they didn't actually have ranches with fences. They were free roaming, so they were free to interbreed. Consequently, we see pretty much varied genetics within the population, but all still very close to the Guaranos. We now see a population of pretty diverse types, colors, and so forth. But they all seem to keep the same characteristics. It wasn't until, as a matter of fact, Pat and I did a lot of research in Mexico back in the late 60s and 70s, and we saw them in the wilds of the Yucatan Peninsula. Not many of them. They were already pretty much taken out by these Texans who were collecting them in the late 50s and early 60s, taking them out by the thousands and bringing them into Texas. So what we saw were the remnants, and there wasn't very many of them. Of course, they've all been replaced by other horses, larger horses for the tourist community. But from Spain and Portugal to Cuba to the Yucatan Peninsula, and from there brought up into Texas. From Texas, they were sent to Spokane, Washington, to Michigan, Iowa, and indeed some to Florida. Most of those have kind of disappeared. They aged out and so forth. The breeders who were in different places, Heidi's grandfather and his partner, Walt Johnson, in Spokane, were breeding there for quite a while. And the horses that were sent to Iowa, some people bought them. In fact, we communicated with one lady in British Columbia who acquired one from Iowa, and she was into breeding up in British Columbia. All this tells you how adaptable these animals are, from mountains of Portugal to the scrub tropics in the Yucatan, to the desert of West Texas, to Spokane, Washington, to Canada, to Iowa, and of course, hot, humid Florida. They survived all over the place. Never had any problem. I hope we don't lose power. A storm's coming through. So if that happens, we'll try to get back on. So they have a long and interesting history. And I find it fascinating when I talk to people they had never heard of them. Most people know about the Spanish Mustangs and such, but all that came 50 to 100 years later. And we're looking at the very beginning. We make the statement that these horses were the very first horses to be on the continental North America, starting in Mexico and then coming up. Horses that were brought into Florida by the 1530s, late 30s, early 40s. Those were also from Cuba. But over the centuries, more and more horses were brought down from the Northeast into Florida, and they became the cracker horses. And of course, we know about the coastal Spanish horses all along the East Coast. But the ones in Mexico, they stayed pure because nothing else was introduced for all those centuries. Can you hear that thunder?
I do. Fingers crossed we don't lose you. Well, thank you, Rick.
We are keeping our fingers.
I think that the story of how long they maintain their purity is really interesting because, if horses are free to roam, they're free to interbreed, and And that's a really cool
Right.
story about
But there
how
was nothing else
genetically
there.
diverse they still are. But they're still a distinct unit, a genetic package.
Well, one of the things we see on our own ranch, because we do have other breeds of horses here, is the Galiceños don't interact. They're not afraid of them. They just don't interact with the other horses. Even when we have a stallion around donkeys or other breeds of horses, the Galiceño herd is a Galiceño herd. And it's quite separate from the others that are roaming around together.
You're cliquish.
Yeah. They form their own clique.
Yeah.
But on the ranch here, we just counted up again to be sure. But we have 41 Galiceños altogether. And we have, what were the numbers? 20, there we go, 24 females and 7 breeding stock stallions. And this surprises a lot of people. We keep all of our stallions together. They live together, not in stalls. They interact as a bachelor herd until we take one out and put them on a separate piece of property to breed. So we introduce a stallion to some select mares, leave them together for 4 to 6 weeks, and then take the stallion back home and then take care of the mares while they're pregnant, give them special treatment. We have 10 geldings that we have as riding horses and some yearlings that are currently being trained, and just fantastic horses. You've probably seen pictures of them, how they just gather around us, super friendly. But
yeah, these horses, it seems like the versatility is pretty amazing. What are y'all doing with them, and what do other people do with them?
Well, because of their intelligence, we can train them to do just about anything. And when I say train them, it's giving them opportunity to learn new things. They're always curious, eager to learn, and for the most part, eager to please. Affectionate, very affectionate. What's going on? Or got food for me? But what can they do? That's a question we're often asked. And the answer is anything we ask them to do. We train them to pull carts. They're great trail. But as terms of riding and competition, both English and Western disciplines, they can do just about anything. They're great jumpers and have a little bit of advantage. Now, these are horses, even though they're pony size. So when we talk about them as horses, because of the proportions, people see them out in the pasture and they say, "Oh, nice horses," and then they walk up to them and discover how small they are. Mm-hmm. So they're just like any other horse in proportion, not a pony. But when it comes to competition, they're ponies, and they can outperform any pony around. Jumps, they love to jump. They do it for fun. Fortunately, they can jump a 4-foot fence, but they tend to stay where they are unless we try to separate them and they want to go back to their friends. But in terms of competition, the 2.5 foot jumps, it's just easy for them and they enjoy it. So hunter jumper, dressage, they perform beautifully. I'll have Heidi talk about her experiences there. And Western pleasure. People in Texas still use them for cutting cattle, and they have a nice advantage because they're very agile. They can go up into narrow arroyos and be able to turn around and track down cattle. So they really can do anything. I used to say that everything except perhaps roping. And then I was corrected and said, nope, we use them for roping. They know how to behave, and even though they're only 600 pounds, they can contain a 1,200 pound cow. I don't know how they do it, but they do it. So really, anything, they can do anything. How do you want to tell them your experiences?
Yeah. When we first got the Galiceños, I made the intelligent decision to start taking lessons on them. And my primary lesson horse was Diosa de Oro, Dee Dee. And she and I took hunter jumper lessons. And the girl knows how to bring her game. And I brought in another mare, Nina Ella out of Texas, and did some lessons on her. Once again, she also knew how to bring her game. When I would go into that arena, my horses knew how to bring on their best face in hunter jumper. And then we'd go on trail competitions, and they love trail. Oh my gosh, they are so curious of everything. And they look around and really enjoy trail. I was able to hook a cart up to Dee Dee, and that was fantastic. She was showing off, and she liked that. The others are all running around. There's also a picture of me on Dee Dee in the middle of the field with all the other horses, just kind of following us, just for fun. There isn't a whole lot that I haven't been able to do within my own parameters, but they're capable of a lot more than I can do with them. I mean, I was just a beginner, and I still managed to do very well on the backs of these horses. Somebody with more training could do even more with them. The limitations aren't there. Right now we have Toby in Texas, and he is being trained in dressage. And for being only 4 years old, he's really starting to go up in the ranks with his trainer, and they're having a blast. So with the right trainer, with the right attitude, they have the personality and the will. They just need the work.
You've gotten good ribbons.
Oh yeah, I've gotten all kinds of ribbons.
Yeah, I had the horses that were more trained.
Oh yeah.
It's actually kind of funny at those shows to see people riding their 16, 17 hand horses, looking down at this little 12 and a half hand horse, and kind of in disdain until the judge hands the blue ribbon over to Heidi. And
the horse knows how to move. She just does. That's it. And I've seen people with loads more experience with a much, much prettier, I guess, horse. And I take the blue ribbon. And just because the horse knows how to do her stuff.
Right. Emily Rose, would you put up the Facebook page for Galiceños of Suwannee Ranch, because there are a lot of great photos of Heidi riding and other people actually riding, and also of Suzanne interacting with the horses there at the ranch.
Yeah, let me pull that up. And then while I'm getting that, here's the email too, if you have any contact questions or anything like that. The email is galicenoswanee@aol.com, and the Facebook group is Galiceno of Suwannee. So here it is. That's the name. You can search that on Facebook, and that'll pull it up. They also have a website that is linked through their Facebook, which is here.
Yeah, great photos that really showcase what the breed can do.
Yeah. Just recently, we posted a picture on the Livestock Conservancy of the geldings that are coming up. They're going to need jobs, and they're adorable. It's the picture where they're all eating out of the same bucket, even though there's 6 other buckets around for them, but they're all just kind of chilling at the same bucket.
You mentioned endurance, and that's one of the things about these horses that is kind of hard to believe. Um, there's one characteristic that they have, and in our uh, discussion, sometimes we say the small horse with a big heart. And as Suzanne mentioned, that's how she found us. They, I use that phrase, and it has a double meaning. The big heart is, of course, they are very affectionate and do well with. They do super with children, but they physically have a big heart, proportional to the size. A 650 pound horse, their heart is actually larger than other horses, and that gives them tremendous endurance. They can go all day long, and not barely break a sweat. There's stories that the folks out in Texas used to tell us that when they go out to bring in the cattle, the people who had quarter horses would take two horses in their trailer, one for the morning ride and one for the afternoon ride. The Galiceno people would ride their horses to pick up the cattle and use that same horse all day long, and the horse would never tire. They just like to keep going. Um, we have people who insist that you need to train them in a round pen and to get them tired out. You'll be there all day. You better have a half a dozen people doing it with you. But the horse won't tire. They just like to keep going. They're absolutely amazing. I mean, they do more than you expect. It just, you can tell I'm kind
of. So they are smaller. What, like 12 to 13 and a half hands? So can they carry an adult then? I mean, I just saw
Correct.
Adults, right?
Yep. And like I said, all day long, and they just don't get tired. They carry, I mean, they're great for children, but they continue to be good for anybody. Adults, 200 pounds, no problem. No problem at all. They don't struggle. We have people who actually look at the pictures and say, "Oh, you're too big for that horse." No, we're not. And you look at them as they're being ridden. They're not struggling. They're not straining at all. And of course, we wait until they're about 3 years old before we truly ride them. We put a saddle on them at 2 years old, but that's just to get used to the saddle. A little bit of weight, but 3 years old, and that's when they get started.
When it looks like we have a question that Barbara asked, discuss gatedness in Galicenos. Would you have any thoughts on this? I'm not sure. So gatedness in Galicenos in particular.
Well, of course, they have the usual walk, trot, canter. But when we see them out in the pasture running and playing, many of them have what's called an extended walk. It's a very fast ground covering movement that is extremely smooth. And I'm not sure if I can describe it, but we have seen it. Now, there have been studies done on the gatedness of Galicenos, and the report came back as they're not gated. All of the videos that we took to look at the gated situation was in the round pen. That's what they do in the round pen. That's what they were trained to do, walk, trot, canter. But out in the field, they have their own energy-saving extended walk that's as fast as a fast trot. We have seen it done under saddle once. I don't know how this rider got her to do it, but she did. And in fact, we were doing a demonstration of the Galiceño as a rare breed. Heidi was doing the announcing, and we had this rider going around the stadium. And Heidi's watching her and say, "Oh, Isn't that beautiful?
I was actually supposed to be talking about the Galiceno. I was mid-sentence and I saw Nina break out into this beautiful gait that I'd never been able to get her into myself. And I just stopped mid-sentence. Oh, that's pretty. and you see the babies do it in the field. The trick is getting them to do it under saddle. Like I said before, I'm not experienced enough, but they do have a super smooth gait and their trot is not bumpy at all. It's super easy to sit through. And they have a nice rocking canter that's absolutely amazing. Very sure-footed as well.
Well, Suzanne, we'll shift the camera a little bit. Suzanne, what is your history with the breed and your role right now with the Galiceños?
I'm like the grandmother, I guess. I spend a lot of time with the babies. I think it's important to keep that human contact. It's easy with so many to lose track of who's out in the field. So I try to establish that bond so that anytime humans come around them, then they associate it with something warm and affectionate. Sometimes food is involved.
Yes.
When I got my two horses, my two geldings in 2013, I had no real experience with horses. This was something I was taking on in my later years. And I've had so much fun learning. I've had some falls and some knocks and stuff like that, but I didn't realize how much I loved these horses. And I wanted to say I rode Tossa on solo trail rides, which was not the smartest thing, but I didn't have anybody to ride with. So we had 70 acres and a lot of it, most of it was wooded with just a couple paths. And he loved just leaving the path and charging through the woods, jumping over ravines, finding his way. It was like, go for it, dude. And it was fun for me. I mean, I suppose people who are serious about horses probably think, well, that's a waste of time. You weren't training him to do anything, but he was so enjoying it. And I was enjoying the adventure of it. Like we didn't know where we were in the woods, and he'd come out somewhere like near the barn or, somewhere with a trail and be like, oh, here we are. Okay. And then he'd want to go back in a different way. So it was fun to me. It was like he was sort of making the decisions, and he was very sure-footed. We never like messed up, or like I said, suddenly we were flying over a ravine because he knew it was there. I didn't even see it. So,
oh wow.
Anyway, so I spend more time. The older I get, the more time I spend on the ground, and you guys are too young to appreciate that. But as you get older, you don't want to hurt yourself too badly. But yeah, so that's basically just try to keep hands on and learn and just keep learning.
Well, that's what she does with the horses. Otherwise, for the rest of us, she keeps us organized.
Oh yeah, the librarian in me.
Well, in terms of learning, as other people are watching this and will watch this video too, if they were really interested in Galiceno horses and helping to conserve them, what are some things that you would say, if someone's just starting out and they're just hearing for the first time about Galicenos through you and through your page, what are some tips you would have for them if they're interested in this work? Well, one thing we try to do is to get people to come visit before they commit. We get inquiries quite a bit. They'd like to get started. They'd like to learn about the breed. And I really prefer that they come here. Some people it's not possible, but we've taken satellite herd stock, breeding stock, stallion and a couple of mares to as far away as Arizona. So we have a family in Arizona that has horses, West Texas,
Tennessee, and soon to be in Virginia. But I really like them to come to be around the horses, as I say it, to walk among living history, learn about them, learn about the personalities, make sure they know what they're getting into. And also, I have to put it this way as well, we want to meet them, the people, to make sure they're of their commitment and are they suitable? Can they really become dedicated to keeping this breed, or are they going to end up selling them, splitting them up? There's too few to be lost like that. Only recently have we had a good number of geldings or will be gelded youngsters, and those are those for somebody who wants to train and ride, that they're going to be perfect. But if they want to get into breeding, I really want to sit down and talk to them what their commitment is, because one of the things that I fear is we get somebody who breeds indiscriminately and overbreed, keeping the mare pregnant every year and not keeping track of them. We saw that happen once, and they didn't take care of the babies. They were just feral. We don't want that to happen in other times. So we'll be more than happy to help people to tell them what we have experienced. And training is another thing that I think so many times people get the wrong idea of how to train these kinds of horses. Not the same as other breeds. They're too smart, and I say that they can outsmart us too. We think we know what they're going to do, and they tell us different. But getting to know the horse, the breed, and us getting to know the people, we're more than happy to help them get started. And no matter how long it takes, corresponding with one family right now that are interested, and I like their attitude because they're asking now, thinking a year ahead. That's what it takes, not a whim. We were surprised when we met Suzanne the first time. One of the horses that she wanted was one that Heidi and I really didn't want to see leave. But she convinced us she was a good girl. So, and then years later, she comes back to us.
Yeah.
So, a little bit about our facilities. Our place is not fancy by any means, but the way we have it that works for us, we've got the main ranch. That's 52 acres, where the mares are and the babies. This is where we have the majority of the horses. We keep our stallions on a separate piece of property, 20 acres. And they all live together. And then we have another 15 acres, that's basically across the street from the main ranch, and that's where we do our breeding. So we have all these places separate. Heidi lives in one side of it. Suzanne lives on the other side. We live on with the stallions. And of course, they get fed twice a day. They're spoiled, more than spoiled. Sometimes they're invited inside the house, but that's so that especially Monty can come in and choose his snack right out of the refrigerator. But that's something that Heidi does. Invites him in.
Yes,
It's a good thing we have tile floor. Let's put it that way.
No, they're well behaved.
Wow.
They are well behaved.
So really,
yeah, we
Rick,
want to try that with a. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, what really would help right now, because there are so few horses, is to find conservation breeders who are willing to look at this as a long-term project, I guess, or investment of time. Yeah.
That's what we've been concentrating on, and that's one of the reasons that we've traveled so much, bringing one or two horses for display, teach people about them. We used to do that when the Mother Earth News fairs were going in pre-COVID. We traveled 36,000 miles a year carrying horses around all over the place. And we've got contacts that way. But what else can be done besides finding additional people to breed? That's something that I know that Livestock Conservancy and you, Charlene, have been dealing with is reproductive genetic conservation, freezing embryos, semen, so forth. This is a problem that we have because of the small horses and our location. We don't have the people around, the vets around who can actually do the collection and freezing and shipping and such. Plus, we're a very small operation. I mean, we have enough to make sure everybody's fed, and occasionally the people are fed. But we can't really afford to do the collection and make sure the annual fees and so forth with preserving these tissues. That's what needs to be done to make sure that the genetics is not lost. Things are tough all over. Not a lot of people, a lot of new people are getting into horses. But times will change, I hope, for the better. And that's, I believe, our major focus is to figure out how to do that collection and preserving of materials. Any help we can get with that would be well appreciated.
All right.
And speaking of help, we need help here at the ranch too. Anybody interested in Florida, let me know. Mentally stable too. Yeah. We do have room for another partner, and love to have somebody contact us and ask about it. We're glad to interview and talk about it. Because some of us are, well, I guess we're all getting older, but some of us are getting old. And we want to make sure things continue well into the future. So you're looking at the people who will follow us and looking for more.
Yeah. So everybody, if you you haven't heard, the way to get in touch with Rick and his crew down there is Galiceño Suwannee at AOL.com. That's GALICENO SUWANNE at AOL.com. And I say that because this also becomes a podcast. And so if folks can't see our notes, they know how to get a hold of you. If you are looking for an opportunity to be a conservation breeder, or if you're looking for an opportunity to learn more about the breed or to visit Rick and Pat's ranch, get in touch with them. Check out their Facebook page. Their horses are so cool. They're just beautiful. They're so handy. There's a place for this piece of history in our modern world, I think. I think they could really be something special for folks. But getting them out there is what needs to happen. before we wrap up, Rick, Suzanne, Heidi, Pat, any last thoughts? Anything you want to say to folks?
Anybody?
Okay, I'll say something.
Okay.
Our farrier a few weeks ago, he's relatively new and we love him. And he said, I don't believe you guys know all the names of these horses. How do you do that? And I said, they're like family members. Don't you know the names of all your family members? And of course he said, well, most of them, some I'd rather not know. But that was my response was, of course we know their names.
All 41 of them,
yeah,
plus the others. Yeah.
Why wouldn't we? I mean, it took me 6 months to memorize them, but when I first got here, but as we add new babies and we know their names because they're sentient beings, in other words. They're not just animals running around.
And they all have their own little characteristics, their own personalities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it also helps that we have a whole bunch of different colors and the varying tones and everything from pretty dark, almost black, to almost white with blue eyes.
Yeah.
No Appaloosa pattern or paints or any of that.
That's
The
not part of the
Galiceno is
breed.
all solid colors.
Yeah. And rows.
Okay.
And rows.
All right.
Well, and probably the last question that I think people would want to know is, you guys have dedicated a ton of time, conserving Galicenos and breeding them. But if they were to, if we were to lose that breed, what would be the crucial thing that we lose? Like, what is your favorite, most compelling part of the Galiceno breed that you would want to fight to preserve and would want to encourage others to preserve?
Well, besides their very unique genetics, they're quite different than many other breeds. We're looking at a piece of history, and we're not just preserving a horse breed, we're preserving history. And as I said, even though I wasn't much in terms of history when I was back in school, I've learned to appreciate the history. It's something we need to preserve so that we can understand how where these things came from, and they have value in many, many different ways. And I'm hoping people will see that and bring them back to the forefront like they used to be. It's funny, there were so many of them back in the 60s who thought that they would ever go nearly extinct when thousands of them were brought in, but they were spread around and not considered for to keep some back for breeding. Many of them were outcrossed to other breeds to bring the qualities of the Galiceños into those other breeds. We don't want to lose that ability, but you can't have. You need to have both. Breeding them pure and outcrossing them to improve other breeds. Once we were approached and said, you know what you need to do to improve your breed? And Heidi was taken back with this person that came up and said, we don't need to improve our breed. They wanted to improve them by increasing the size. Unfortunately, some people have done that. And now there's so-called Galiceños out there that are not pure because they've been inbred with other breeds to make them taller. There's a difference between breeding for marketing and breeding to save a breed. We're dedicated to saving the breed, not just to have horses to sell. We figured out how to make $1 million breeding horses. You start with $2 million.
Or 10.
Yeah, that's the way it goes. It's not for the money. It's for the love. And by the way, we're not for profit, and officially, not just in fact.
That's right. Y'all have a 501c3 and you do a lot of education as well as conservation.
We do. Exactly. That's what that's in our mission, to educate. And it kind of plays in with our whole background. Every one of us have been educators. So dedicated now to a different outcome. But that's our story.
We're sticking to it.
Well, thank you for sticking to it. And folks who are out there, folks who tune in later, please reach out to the ranch and to Richard and Suzanne and Heidi and Pat and see what you can do to be a part of saving this breed.
By the way, we do have guest quarters for people who want to visit. So
okay,
we treat them right.
I'm sure.
And enjoy company.
All right. Well, thank you all so much.
Come visit.
Yeah, we'll be there. We'll be there to see you.
Yeah, I'm sure we'd love to. And
Right.
Here at the Livestock Conservancy, we are very grateful for the work that you guys are doing. And if anyone is curious about more horse stocks, the livestockconservancy.org is our website, but we also are on Facebook, and we'll be back again next week with a Corolla horse chat. But for now, we are very grateful to your work and, you're active members of the livestock group, but also the rare equines group. And we can see your presence, educating about Galiceños constantly. So the work that you do is important. And we'd like to thank you for coming on today, but also, just in general, all the work that you do and the effort you put in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I'd like
Thank you for having us.
I want to thank the Livestock Conservancy for all they've done for us as well. So it goes two ways.
Yeah. Partners in conservation.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you all. Emily Rose, do you have any closing information you need to share?
I think that's it for us, except that we are grateful for Manipro sponsorship as well. And you can visit their website. And then we're also back on again next week, which I mentioned, with the Corolla Horse Chat. So back same time, same place. Our Facebook group, if you go to our Facebook page, it will be broadcasting at the Livestock Conservancy, 2 p.m. Eastern, same setup. So we will see you then, and you can find this broadcast on YouTube as well and on our podcast site, which we'll link later. Thank you.
Thanks for watching.